basically, if Russia is allowed to win, that's the end of the global order, as we have known it for decades. The most fundamental rule was that you cannot just invade and conquer and annex another country, neighboring country, just because you're stronger. This was the case for centuries, for thousands of years. It was not the case. If we talked earlier about state budgets, the reason the average expenditure on the military went down from 50% to 7% and released all these resources to healthcare and education and so forth is because most people, most countries felt that they're safe. That even if they have a strong neighbor, it's just not done anymore. Maybe there'll be some kind of border clash or whatever, but the idea that the neighbors will just invade us, conquer us, and annex our country, it's just not done. And this is exactly what Putin is trying to do in Ukraine. It's completely different from, say, the American invasion of Iraq or Afghanistan, which had huge, of course, problems there, but there was no intention of making Iraq the 51st state of the United States.
They weren't going to take the oil. They weren't going to take the land. That wasn't going to happen.
I mean, people talk about imperialism. They forgot what imperialism means. Originally, imperialism in the Roman sense, in the Ottoman sense, in the Mongol sense, is that you invade a neighboring country and just conquer and annex it. It's not cultural imperialism. This is imperialism. People forgot because it wasn't done for quite some time. And this is exactly what Putin is trying to do. If he gets away with it, we will see more and more Putins all over the world.
And that's the long story short on all of it. We are experiencing a resurgence of imperialism across the world these days, with Russia being the most obvious one, but we've got China looking at Taiwan. We have Venezuela looking at Venezuela. I believe that's correct. Yes, Venezuela looking at one of its neighbors to annex some of its land. We've got Iran just wanting to wipe out, Israel. But overall, the idea that we've had for so long that our nations were basically safe is being destroyed before our very eyes. Yes, there was no chance in the last 80 years of the U.S. being genuinely attacked. There was nobody big enough and bad enough to do it. But they're working on it. Just saying. And if the time becomes right where the U.S. is no longer the world power, where the U.S. doesn't have the military or capabilities and lets itself fall behind, we will quickly find that there are many nations across this world that want a piece of this particular pie. And they might be able to do it if we let ourselves fall. But make no mistake, the only people that can get us to that point are us, the U.S. citizens. So let's go ahead and get started on what's going on. The big news, of course, is the Russian invasion of Kharkiv Oblast. So let's go ahead and get into it. I have got so much information as to what's going on here. There's, the tabs go all the way across the old screen here. So, and there's a lot of things going on, and I'm going to try my best to summarize. I know there's duplicated information. I know there's multiples of some things, and some things it's just one. But there's a lot going on. So I want you to know all about it as best we can figure out. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. We'll start off with President Zelensky's speech this evening here. Talking about the heavy combat all along the front line. Now, just so we're clear on this, just because there's heavy combat on the front line right now does not mean that this wasn't part of the plan. The overall plan appears to have been to force Ukraine to pull resources from other parts of the front lines to send them to Kharkiv. But we will go on about all of this. Let's go ahead and get started on this. I'm going to go ahead and play it here. And I'll read to you what he says here. So just let's go ahead and get on to this. Dear Ukrainians, here are the results of this day. The main thing is that in Kharkiv region, Russian troops tried to expand their operations against Ukraine today. We understand the size of the occupiers' forces and see their plan. Our soldiers, our artillery, our drones are responding to Russia. I'm grateful to each of our soldiers, each sergeant, each officer who are defending our positions in the way we need to. We are adding our forces to the Kharkiv direction and along the line of our state border, along the entire front line. We will invariably destroy the occupier in such a way as to disrupt any Russian offensive intentions. And that starts over at that point in time. This is the overall scope we're looking at, and I'll tell you, just kind of give you a summary right off the bat. It does not appear that this is a force sufficient to capture and occupy significant parts of Ukrainian territory. There's not enough men to do so, but more importantly, there's not enough equipment to actually puncture deep into Ukrainian lines. They don't have enough tanks or trucks or armored personnel carriers, but let's go ahead and look at what they are doing, which is definitely significant. The air raid alert started at 9:03 a.m. and continuously ran in Kharkiv region for 12 and a half hours. This is the longest air raid alert in the region since the beginning of the full-scale war. And as Anton Herashchenko states, which is his native city, it's hard to see what Kharkiv is going through. Hi, John Paul. Glad to see you here, and I'm doing really well, but we got some people that are struggling here, and I'll be talking a lot about it here. Thank you for keeping up with everything going on and for joining us today. Let's continue on in Kharkiv. Now, overnight, there was some additional strikes on Kharkiv, the city itself. This is the consequences of an S-300 missile strike on Kharkiv overnight, where an 11-year-old child and a 72-year-old woman were wounded. 12 private homes were damaged. There was just a report by the head of the committee, Alexander Syrski. There are heavy battles along the entire front line. Special attention is paid to destinations in Kharkiv Oblast, Pokrovsky, and other destinations in Donetsk Oblast. We discussed defensive actions and strengthening our positions in the Kharkiv region and separately Chasiv Yar. Obviously, combat clashes in the north of the state line there continued. Even Belgorod got into the action because there was some air defense systems going off on Belgorod. My understanding is that there were already drone attacks being planned for Belgorod and Belgorod Oblast in general. So they're in the middle of it too. And again, like I said, there's several repeats of the same information here, so I'm going to be quickly going through. Now, the media has been claiming that Russian troops captured several villages in Kharkiv Oblast in an attempt to push towards Volchansk. Now, this is still in debate here. I'm just going to put it that way. So the information is still being updated. I believe some areas the Russians are maintaining a presence on the south side of the Ukraine-Russia border. They do report that they are sending reserve troops to the Kharkiv sector to try and counter this. They've also said in various places that they were expecting this, that they were ready for this, and their plans are ready to move forward. Russia began a new wave of offensive action in Kharkiv's direction. Ukraine met Russian forces with our troops, brigades, and artillery. Now, they've been building up troops in the area across from Sumy and across from Kharkiv, reportedly around 50,000 men at this point. And they've been intensifying their missile and artillery attacks against Kharkiv itself. There is a theory currently in play here that the hope is to create a buffer zone in order to be able to bring shorter range heavy artillery closer to the Kharkiv city itself and thus begin a systematic shelling of the city. There is the possibility that the Russians could mobilize additional assault units further into the region, and they have been preparing for this for a while. Their theory, though, is that the real purpose of this attack on Kharkiv Oblast is, like I said earlier, to divert Ukrainian forces from Donetsk so that they can really step up their actions in that area. We've already seen signs of that. They've been pushing hard down there so far. As of current reports, there's been no significant change in the situation over in Donetsk Oblast, but that may change overnight or even be changing as we speak. Russia has been reportedly storming the village of Pletanivka. Let me go ahead and pull up the deep state map here. We want to get a little bit of reference here. We're talking about, yeah, we know about the supporting the project there. We're talking about the Kharkiv Oblast right here. They're mostly being attacked from, that's Sumy. Kharkiv Oblast right here. There we go. They're mostly attacking from Belgorod Oblast, but there's a lot of things going on. In particular, we have seen this area right here and right here. You can see let me just zoom in a little bit more here. Kharkiv itself is down here in the bottom corner. Let me see if I can still pull this up here. Bear with me a second so I can draw on my screen. Okay. Down here in the bottom left of the screen, which I think you'll be able to see, yep, right here is Kharkiv itself. The main assaults so far have been more in this area right here and this area right here. I have some unofficial reports that the attacks have been pushing farther south than this, and I'll talk about those in a little bit here. Let's see. At least reported they may be pushing down into this area right here, but no other sources are specifically mentioning this, and this may have been countered at this point, or it may have been the original intention, or their forces may be pushing in that direction, but not able to make real headway. We're looking at this overall. Now, the Ukrainian forces have been watching what's going on, and they believe... Hi, Robbie. Glad to see you here. Always glad to have you on board. They believe that this does not look like it is properly staffed for a full-on, like I said, to actually capture and hold territory at this point. They believe it looks more like a large-scale reconnaissance and force. They don't have enough trucks, supplies, enough heavy equipment, not enough tanks or BMPs or armored personnel carriers. Most of the forces are on foot, which means that if they're on foot and they're walking, that means that their force is not speed mobile enough to be able to penetrate deep into Kharkiv without telegraphing every bit of their intention at this point in time. They call it, in several cases, more of a complicated situation, but under control. They do also state that there have been reports of kilometers deep breakthroughs, but that these are not accurate. I will give a little bit to the rumors on this one, in that I believe there is a lot to be said about watching exactly what's going on for people who are on the ground. The general media states that 4 border villages in Kharkiv have been captured. That would be, back to the deep state map here, Borosivka, Pilnya, which is right on the border anyway, so it would fall immediately. Strelicha, and Krasny, potentially all of them in Russian hands. Over here, Pletanivka and Hatishke, all potentially in Russian hands. Again, but right now they're reporting this gray zone. The fighting is intense in these areas, and that's where it looks like we're at. Of course, civilian casualties have been reported. There's no surprise on that. In particular, an attack on Vovchansk, a town about 50 kilometers northeast of Kharkiv, and had, I believe it was 2 fatalities and many injured. Let's go ahead and take a look at where that's at here. Vovchansk. Let me see if I can find it here. Avdiivka. Right there. Okay, there we go. A lot of damage here, but you can see that as of current reports, Volchansk itself is not suffering a direct assault on it, directly. That doesn't mean they're not getting artillery. I'm just saying that at this point, it's not reported that there are enemy troops inside the city or the village itself. However, the population in Volchansk is being evacuated due to the shelling of the city. The Volchansk itself is not that large. You quickly divert here. Okay, it is decently sized. It had a pre-war population of 17,459. So no telling what the current population is, at least according to the sources I have available. So this could be a significant evacuation going on. And if there is, they're going to be seeing those people moving down probably along these roadways in the area, likely heading south and towards places like Stary Saltiv. Now, my report is that the bridge has been hit again in this area. Robbie, thank you very much. And that there is a bit of panic going on. They believe there may be some signs that they are effectively encircled, and they're evacuating the area right now as well. So the evacuations may be going as far south as Stary Saltiv. We're watching this whole situation, and this is going to be tough for a little while yet. Ukraine, if they can get Western assistance moved to the front lines in this area really fast, they could probably turn this assault back pretty easily and directly. Easily in quotes, of course. Nothing in war is easy. But that's where we stand at the moment. Let's keep on going. I got a lot of stuff here. The Ukrainians report that these assaults have been repelled, but they also clarify that with there is intense fighting happening there as well. This is according to Andrei Kovalenko, the head of the National Security and Defense Council, states that the Russians may have the resources to escalate actions in Kharkiv, but it has no capabilities for seizing it. Not enough men, not enough equipment. Of course, the BBC military expert states that Russia's exact goals in this offensive are not clear. Overall, they believe that they are creating a buffer zone, but again, the real thought is that they're trying to get close enough to bring heavy artillery that's shorter range closer to Kharkiv city itself and potentially use it to shell and destroy the city as they work. So really, this whole analysis here about creating a buffer zone, beyond being one that they would use to push for further military action, does not ring true to my ears. But understand that is some of the analysis that's out there at this time. There is, according to the people reporting at this point in time, in this case, the Kharkiv Regional Administration, that there have been many sabotage and reconnaissance groups that have been trying to enter the territories, but they've been rebuffed, and that there is no current ground threat to Kharkiv itself. As Defense of Ukraine states, we are sending our best regards to uninvited guests. The report from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. At present, defensive battles against the attempts of the Russian invaders to conduct offensive actions and advance deep into the territory of our state continue in Kharkiv. In the directions of the settlements of Lipsy and Volchansk of the Kharkiv region, counterattack measures continue. The enemy uses infantry and equipment. Also, battles are currently going on for settlements in the border areas, which were in fact in the gray zone. Stolicha, Pilnye, Borisivka, as well as Olinakovo and Oherseve. The defense forces of Ukraine operate on prepared defense lines. Fire damage is carried out with the task of disrupting the enemy offensive and destroying the occupier who has wedged himself into our defenses. Decisions to strengthen our combat units will be implemented. In other words, bring in reserves. So interpretations. The Ukrainians did not build their defensive lines right on the border with Russia. It would be insane to do so. They couldn't spare enough men and equipment to reliably put thousands upon thousands of troops right on Russia's border. So the defensive lines are going to be at least a little way back from the border itself, giving Ukraine enough time to use the current troops in place to halt or slow the offensive that Russia's pulling off. And then while they staff up their defensive lines, their actual dug-in defenses. And that is what it looks like is going on here. The Russians have already ended up at Ukraine's built-in defenses, and they're being effectively dealt with at those points. There's been no other signs of an actual breakthrough beyond the main actual defensive line as of yet, just so we're clear. And I'm going to be watching that very carefully. Jason J. Smart, journalist, reports that there are evacuations being carried out in these border settlements. And is the possibility that they are basically occupying up some of those border settlements. Something to keep in mind. Now I've got a whole bunch of more detail-oriented things about Kharkiv, but before I jump into that, I want to share something with you that came from Robbie Russell here. As he states, I'm sure you know, but they are pushing Kharkiv again. My mother and father-in-law are in a city east of Kharkiv called Stary Saltiv. The Russians are surrounding the Stary Saltiv, and my in-laws appear to be trapped at the moment. Just an update, and as he asked, if you would mind saying a prayer, please absolutely do. I have already, and I will continue to pray for Robbie's relatives and for Stary Saltiv in general. Volchansk was attacked in the morning their time. Ukrainian troops pushed them back, and now they're pushing all around Stary Saltiv. They have struck the bridge again. That's coming from Robbie, who has relatives in the area. So thank you for that report. We've been going through a lot of that detail, but I wanted to make sure that got out there as well, because I want you guys to know this is the most current information we can get. So there were a lot of the larger equipment that Russia was putting into this assault was actually destroyed before it ever got off of Russian soil. Here's 4 BMPs and a Ural truck destroyed today in the north of Kharkiv region during Russian offensive actions. And the first comment is, with a Ural truck, seriously? A Ukrainian defender in Volchansk, Kharkiv region, shares about the situation in the city. Let me go ahead and go through this. It's about 21 seconds long. And obviously, once again, he's going to be speaking in Ukrainian. I'll just read what he says to you. On May 10th, 2024, shelling intensified in the city of Volchansk. The situation is tense, so local residents are advised to evacuate the city of Volchansk to avoid coming under fire or stay in shelters. The situation is more or less stable. Glory to Ukraine. So there is one sound of distant artillery in the background. You can hear that if you pay close attention to the audio. But overall, they're able to record relatively uninterrupted in Volchansk itself. This could indicate many things, but it does indicate that at least the situation is relatively stable. I'm going to just put it like that. The first images of attacks by Russians in the vicinity of Morohovets, Kharkiv region, with 3 units of Russian equipment destroyed. My understanding is that this was actually potentially geolocated improperly, but I'm not going to call that for sure. As Anton Herashchenko states, the issue of the Russian offensive in the Kharkiv direction is widely discussed, but this is not news and is not unexpected. Ukraine has been preparing for this scenario and is ready to face the enemy. The Russia would need to involve very large forces in order to capture Kharkiv, and they would have noticed by this point in time. He speculates that Russia's main goal could be to escalate the situation in the Kharkiv direction to force Ukraine to transfer large reserves from Donbass to the north and weaken the AFU in the Donbass area. Here's a couple of BMPs that were destroyed as they attempted to cross the border into Ukraine. Ukraine is not kidding around. They are immediately engaging any targets they can find. This is the same picture as before. And this is where it mentions that geolocation that showed it as being in Kharkiv itself, it was basically taken back. They state that this actually was north of Pilnya, and that puts Pilnya is right on the Russian border. Therefore, these destroyed vehicles never made it into Ukraine at all. They were destroyed before they could even cross the border. Clearly, Ukraine was paying attention. From Supernova Plus, a report from the Belgorod front, situation as of 1600, local time at that. And the report is that their initial assault failed. But let me read the original here. The situation on the Kharkiv front at this hour is as follows. There is a battle for the main height. With the forces of the 5th and 4th Assault, Akhmat Zapad 13th Brigade, it turns out that ours are pushing. The left flank of Gatish is now being cleared. There are no more specifics yet. Ukrainians bite hard. Nobody there is going to rent out villages and cities. To everyone who has already taken Volchansk in their cart and opened the gates to Kharkiv, big greetings from the frontline soldiers. They ask you not to write stupid things. So clearly, the initial reports that the Russians had taken Volchansk were not accurate. And the Russians had reported much greater gains than they actually managed to put in the books. So as they said, this is where they're at. The Russians are clearly being held, at least pushed back or prevented from advancing at the rate that would make this make a real change for possible at this point. So more maps. Just overall, just kind of give you an idea. These underlined areas are where the Russians are at and potentially occupying these smaller villages. Tatarigami put together a full thread on the situation here. And as of, this would have been, 10:54 a.m. my time, which would make it about, I'd guess about 5 in the evening in Ukraine, just as an estimate. Overnight, Russian infantry, backed by armored vehicles, entered Kharkiv Oblast from Belgorod area using small unit tactics. They'd already warned about this scenario. The capture of these border villages is unexpected, and they're expecting that it means they're anticipating this to divert Ukrainian forces from the main Russian offensive in Donbass. Considering manpower shortages, Ukraine will be forced to redeploy some personnel. Many question how Russian forces cross the border so quickly. The answer is simple. The border is a gray zone heavily surveilled and hence doesn't have defensive structures. Instead, defensive lines are positioned deeper within Ukrainian territory. Manpower shortages compel Ukraine to avoid deploying large units along the border continuously, with fully stocked and ready for immediate use artillery. Placing defenses directly on the border would result in Russian forces occupying vacated or sparsely manned trenches. Russians anticipate a significant social backlash, inducing panic and demands for resolution. This pressure aims to compel the redeployment of units from critical areas of Russian advances in Donbass. Meanwhile, Russian forces deploy infantry units incapable of deep strikes. The situation is expected to evolve. He does add at the very end, thus far, Russian forces have not breached the main Ukrainian defenses. Or as Intel Crab reports, Russia lacks the manpower needed to encircle and capture Kharkiv. Now, I went and grabbed the Null Reports information, and they go through a lot of the same information here. The main thing I took out of this is that the Russians started to spread information about their forces trying to break into Kharkiv, which would later turn out to be mostly true. But again, they reported that before they had their wins in the bank. There are some, of course, losses of these villages. And so, overall, we're also looking at a potential buildup in the Sumy region as well. If Russia's going to do an additional assault there, it will stretch Ukrainian forces thin. And that's the situation in Kharkiv. And that was a lot of information to just assault you with all at once. I'm going to back up to a deep state map and kind of pull things back a little bit here and try and get some overall perspective here for just a moment. Sorry, this thing doesn't seem to have a step between too close and too far. Okay, that should be okay. So once again, the Russians are confirmed to be assaulting into these areas on the north of Ukraine, in the Kharkiv area here. Their goal at this point appears to be to cause enough havoc and chaos that Ukraine is forced to redeploy some of their troops and forces. There are evacuations happening in these border villages. Expect them to continue and for them to stretch farther south as this continues. And that is the long story short. Whew, that's a lot. Just as a reminder, watch out for disinformation. The Kiev Post has reported that they found a manipulated video that was intended to spread a false Russian narrative. And that is that they took a video with the press secretary and a reporter asking a question, and they used some different material to kind of reform it into this question about World War II, effectively saying that the West is trying to erase Russia's contribution to winning World War II. Really, they did a lot of deep analysis here. They said that sometimes the lips weren't matching up. The voices appeared to be just a little off. All of it. It's just a pure disinformation campaign that's being put through by this Russian account, Sprinter Factory. So when you actually go back and look at the original video where this was taken from, they don't even mention Stalin. They don't mention hardly any of this stuff at all. It's actually an unrelated question. So be careful when you watch some of these things. There's a lot of possibility that Russia's getting even better at using AI to create these false narratives. And I sort of mentioned this because in a little bit here, I'll be talking about what Vladimir Putin's been putting out there. But before I do, let's jump into the news out of Ukraine itself. The Ukrainian military aims to form 10 new brigades to defend against further Russian offensives, which could potentially target Kyiv, according to Alexander Pavlyuk. 10 new brigades would be tremendous if they can get the manpower and equipment together to do so. And if they're fully equipped, they'll be a great assistance to Ukraine in continuing their efforts here. Ukraine allocated $179 million for their energy system restoration. This is going to be a drop in the bucket, but it is, with the difficulty of the situation there, they're going to need to invest as much as they can spare to getting their energy back online. According to Alexander Pavlyuk, the critical phase in Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine will come in the next 2 months. And the further details are basically in this next month or two. If they don't receive enough weapons and equipment, things could turn very bad for Ukraine. This is the main deficiency is in artillery and armored vehicles, not in manpower. They're saying they have sufficient bodies, at least at this point in time. The problem is that they need the ability to equip them to get them into battle. Ukraine has had to increase the restrictions on energy supply for business and industry amid the power shortage. They're going to face this for quite some time until they can get more power generating capacity online. According to the justice minister, Ukraine could recruit up to 20,000 convicts into the army. Now, currently they're looking at very much low-level offenses. They're not looking at murderers and stuff like that to get into the army because they need good quality people to be able to carry out their operations, not the nasty things that Russia's been throwing at Ukraine. Ukraine's SBU has arrested a man in Kharkiv who was accused of spying on Ukrainian positions. The 45-year-old man was allegedly tracking Ukrainian firing positions and providing coordinates to Russian intelligence officers. In Ukraine's continuing efforts to root out the corruption in their country, they have arrested the deputy agriculture minister in a theft case. That would be Markian Dmitry Dmitrisevich. There you go, Dmitrisevich. He is one of the suspects in an embezzlement case involving the agricultural minister Mykola Solsky. And I thought this looked pretty interesting here. Ukrainian engineers have unveiled the Raybird unmanned aircraft system capable of carrying out long-duration reconnaissance missions with a flight of up to 28 hours, continuously tracking targets and conducting other operations that require exceptional endurance. Quite the interesting bit of equipment there. Let's move on to the news out of Russia, but we're starting off with Russian President Vladimir Putin. He used his May 9th Victory Day speech to basically go after the West, saying that we're attempting to erase the Soviet Union's contributions to defeating Nazi Germany during the Great Patriotic War or Second World War. This grievance is the one he is drilling into his people as one of his reasons to say the West is at war with Russia. Now, for those who've been paying attention to their history, they know that Russia was worked with Germany at the start of World War II for a couple of years, and in fact was a big part of taking over Poland, working with Germany. Then when Germany betrayed them, that's when they went to the Allies and said, we're going to join up. We need your help. And that's when the Lend-Lease aid started coming in bulk. American tanks, steel, trucks, trains, planes, and equipment showed up to help Russia join the Allies and be part of throwing back the Nazi Germany. Now, that is not to belittle the Russian contribution to defeating Nazi Germany. It'd been nice if they were on the right side the entire time. But they did throw a whole lot of bodies into stopping Nazi Germany at the time for basically selfish reasons, because Germany attacked them. So take your pick on how you want to believe about this, but the West isn't trivializing Russia's sacrifice in ending World War II. We're basically saying, then be honest about it. Putin seized on a recent meeting with the commanders of several frontline Russian formations to portray himself as an informed and effective supreme commander-in-chief of the Russian armed forces, aware of the intricacies of the frontline situation and involved in finding solutions to issues that plague Russian forces. Traveled around and tried to be involved in various things. It sounds like a typical thing you see when somebody takes over management of a company or a division or a department. The first thing they do is go around and try and put their stamp on everything. That sounds exactly like what he attempted to do here. He also tried to portray himself as an effective statesman by surrounding himself with foreign officials at the Victory Day parade, which is why many nations decided to not send their representatives to Russia for the Victory Day parade. There's some additional information on Moldova. In particular, I want to just point out that the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesman Maria Zakharova claimed that the Moldovan government is engaged in a Nazi-like genocide in Moldova. Wow, this sounds familiar, doesn't it? They're working on their cause for war in Moldova. They have no intentions of stopping it in Ukraine. This has gone just ridiculously absurd. Russia has continued to abuse the memory of World War II constantly. As Anton Herashchenko states, it uses the victory narrative to justify its modern war crimes and the genocide they are committing right now. The halo of victory in the Great Patriotic War shines on the Russian special military operation to make it look legitimate. This myth requires no reason, no explanation. It is self-sustainable. So they're calling us the fascists as they do fascist things. Russians believe that their nation contributed more than any other to winning World War II, Jason J. Smart states. The truth is that Moscow started the war in 1939 as Nazi Germany's ally. Russia is as nefarious today as it was in 1939. The Ministry of Defense of the UK put out their intelligence update talking about the Russia's Victory Day parade. this parade was a little bit bigger than some of the other recent ones. It did still only have one tank, the T-34-85, that, as I understand, was actually built in Kharkiv, Ukraine. On top of that, they did have a flyover involving Su-25s, Su-30 SMs, and MiG-29 aircraft. And this is really pretty reduced in scale. There's less modern military equipment on display when compared to the pre-war parades. The units that were involved were mostly from military academies, youth and veteran groups, and some domestic security and emergency service groups on parade. And there were 61 military vehicles on display, with the notable absence of their T-14 Armada tank. And, of course, the T-34 tank, which was the lead of the parade. There were 20 main battle tanks in their 2020 Moscow parade. This is going to look rough for Russia. They did display an S-400 air defense system, one of their ballistic missile launching trucks, some armored personnel carriers, and armored trucks. But pretty much everything that is combat capable is being sent to the war in Ukraine. There is a Ukrainian military intelligence drone struck an oil refinery in Russia's Kaluga Oblast. I think I've got more on that with pictures and things like that later on, but they're continuing their war on Russia's oil refining capacity. Russian tycoons have been trying to move their stuff out of Russia and into the West. Well, now they're having to bring it back because Western banks and Western countries are saying, no go, not letting you do that here. So they're trying to bring it back to Russia. But the problem is, if they bring it back to Russia, then it might be seized by the Kremlin. So those Russian billionaires are looking at, it could be seized in the West and it could be seized in the Kremlin. Welcome to being part of the bad guys in a modern war. The Russian-occupied city of Rovinke in the Luhansk region of Ukraine came under fire. It is reported that an oil depot was hit. We've got quite a few short videos of this here. You can see it's a fairly significant amount of fire. And that looks like it was probably one of the air defense systems trying to stop a drone. But it still managed to hit. This is just a funny aside here. City authorities in the Irkutsk region held a vote on repainting a yellow and blue house. People complained it looked like the, Ukrainian flag. Except for Ukraine's flag is not blue, blue. It is just yellow and blue. So they went around and did a little poll of the people nearby, but nobody was really all that clamoring to get the house repainted. As Crimean Wind states here, it's good that all the other problems in the city have been solved. It's a pity that the broken down road on which they stand is not an eyesore for them. This is the Kaluga plant I mentioned earlier. You can see it burning quite merrily over there. That's another one of the drone strikes that happened. Overall, the effects of these drone attacks on the world oil markets has actually been negligible because refined products are not what affects the world oil markets. It's the unrefined oil and the crude oil that they ship out that makes a difference. Another video of that same attack right there. As Jason J. Smart says, Ukraine is 100% justified in attacking all Russian infrastructure and economically important facilities. All right. We're getting into the international stuff right here. The U.S. has announced a new $400 million aid package, including air defense systems, NASAMS, Patriot, etc., Stinger anti-aircraft missiles, equipment to integrate Western launchers, missiles, and radars with Ukraine systems, additional high-mobility HIMARS systems and ammunition, 155 and 105 millimeter artillery rounds, TOW and Javelin missiles, and AT-4 anti-armor systems, precision aerial munitions, high-speed anti-radiation missiles, Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, which I'm curious about because I've seen several analyses that said the U.S. doesn't have Bradleys to spare. Or do they? Interesting. but I've seen a couple saying that, and I've not really been sold on it. M113 armored personnel carriers, mine-resistant MRAPs, basically, patrol boats, small arms ammunition and grenades, demolition munitions, and spare parts. That's quite the little aid package for $400 million. Canada is also contributing 76 million Canadian dollars, or 56 million US dollars, to the German-led initiative for boosting Ukraine's air defenses. The expectation at this point is that Ukraine can receive the first F-16 fighter jets within weeks. This has been an ongoing conversation about when they'll show up. That would make the next possible window here probably mid-June. Belgium is allocating nearly $10 million for Ukraine's energy infrastructure restoration. There's going to be a lot more needed for that. Hi, Jerry and Lucille. Glad to see you both here. And it's okay to be late. There'll be you can start over from the beginning when we get done, and you can watch all the details about Kharkiv. And my heavens, it is a lot. The U.S. has targeted 37 Chinese entities to trade back blacklist due to the national security concerns. This is apart from the 11 companies reportedly connected to the 2023 spy balloon incident. 22 were added to the list because they were linked to China's efforts to improve its quantum technology. This is a lot of stuff to say that America is starting to take China's role seriously, and they're probably going to need a lot more sanctions in the end. Oddly enough, I'm going to kind of just touch on this briefly here, and I'm going to talk about this from a personal perspective for just a moment here. Russia has increased its exports of oil products to Singapore to a record level this year. It is expected that this tendency will continue in the future. Singapore, obviously, is more than happy to take Russian oil, which the reason it caught my eye is that I have had a couple of I'm going to call them scammers, contact me via messaging through Twitter. And one of them claims to be from Singapore. And the timing really caught my eye. The other one claimed to be from China. And that timing caught my eye. So I'm watching that with great interest and seeing what's going on. One of them seems to be trying to feed me misinformation. The other one seems to be just trying to do a normal financial scam type thing. I'm watching them both and paying attention. Ukraine did receive its first F-16 fighter jet simulator from the Czech Republic, and that'll get them ready to do some more training and preparation right before they get the F-16s. Already mentioned the 3 HIMARS missile systems for Ukraine that Germany's going to purchase, so I'll just go on and move on. Tendar gave their analysis of the Ukrainian air campaign against Russia's oil refining industry here. And really, it really comes down to that Russia can't store large quantities of crude oil. Shutting down their oil wells is even more expensive. Repairs are costly and sometimes not feasible, as well as time-consuming. And the worldwide oil prices are actually mostly unaffected and may even go down because Russia's going to have to dump even more of their oil on the markets or risk having to try and stop their oil production. A side note here, the U.S. military is taking action in South America to stop Venezuela from invading its neighbor. And once again, as Jason J. Smart points out, Venezuela, like Iran, North Korea, and China, is emboldened by the lack of Western action to stop the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Backing Ukraine is in our national security interests. Here's another one that kind of caught my eye here. Operation Chrysalid is a secret undertaking organized by France to provide Scalp EG air-launched land attack cruise missiles to the armed forces of Ukraine. According to the sources, the Scalp missiles that could be transferred to Ukrainian forces are divided into two categories. The ones fully operational but soon to reach the end of their service life, as well as the cannibalized ones, with some of their components removed to keep other Scalps in working order. The second group of missiles must undergo restoration at their home factories in Bourget, where one of the facilities belonging to MBDA company is located. France, it sounds like, is stripping their cupboards bare to, at least as far as Scalp EG in order to keep Ukraine in the land attack missiles. And moving across Ukraine's border to Belarus. They're building a military base near the border with Ukraine that could contain nuclear weapons. It's only 120 miles north of the Ukrainian border at a military depot. So interesting, something to keep an eye on. 120 miles is not exactly next door, but it's certainly within striking distance of Ukraine. Let's go ahead and move on to the other information about the front lines here. Let's see if we've gotten this is the update from early this morning. And it's talking about this Pletnivka and then, of course, the area over here. These are just the same information that I addressed earlier today as part of the Kharkiv information. No other parts of the front lines have actually had significant changes over the last 24 hours. The Russians claim that they managed to capture Novokalinovo, but that was probably leftovers from yesterday, not today, and I don't have good confirmation on it from any other source. It's a Russian state news source, so take your pick on whether you believe it or not. Russian troops attacked Chasiv Yar in the village of Yelizavetivka in Donetsk Oblast on May 10th. I want somebody who speaks Ukrainian to spend some time with me on some of these names one of these days. Attacked, they were trying to attack Chasiv Yar. Chasiv Yar is pretty well destroyed again as well. The Russians have also stepped up their efforts to try and break through near the Serbyanki forestry and in the Liman area in northeast Ukraine. But again, no apparent changes in the lines of control. This is confirmed with both Russian and Ukrainian sources. The Kyiv Post, Robbie, I always appreciate you. Thank you. The Kyiv Post reports that Russia currently holds a 20-1 advantage in artillery during the battles in Donetsk region. That's because they've got the stuff, and the West has not provided enough stuff for them to have that, to at least bring it down to anything close to parity just yet. The boat of the Russian occupiers was destroyed on the Dnieper River in the Kherson region. You can see it get hit and just go up in flames. This is, they're having to watch this river constantly, but I swear, why would they try and run a boat across in broad daylight? And on top of that, it's a wide river. Pick a narrower spot or something. It would make sense or something. But, you know, it's a good thing I'm not on Russia's side. We'll just put it that way. Ukraine did manage to drop another Su-25. It was shot down, but there's been no follow-up so far. I've seen this from multiple sources, but we haven't had military confirmation. Holding on for this for now. This is another general staff report stating that they have seen the buildup of troops in the Sumy, on the other side of the Sumy region. So they're watching that area as well. We could be seeing some serious action really soon on that front. And I'm actually more concerned about this right now than I am about Kharkiv, not because of Kharkiv isn't suffering right now, but more because if they open up Sumy as well, the closest reserve troops are going to be the ones fighting in Kharkiv, and they'll have to spread themselves thin to try and prevent both of these areas from having some real problems. This is the information from Krasnodarivka. This is actually from yesterday when I didn't do a stream just because I had other things going on. Also, the information from yesterday on Orlivka, no major change as well, just a little bit of open area and maybe getting to the edge of Umansk. They do report raising their flag on the edge of the town there. Now, this video from the Kyiv Independent is very good. It talks about the Sumy Oblast. Obviously, it's 8.5 minutes long. Too much for me to actually display, but I wanted you guys to have that link. Dropped it in the comments there. Great video to watch when you have a few, 8.5 minutes. Here's the report from War Gonzo. This is the Russian source here. No major changes in Zaporizhia. No major changes in Donetsk. No major changes in Chasiv Yar. So, again, this pretty much confirms the information that we've gotten from all the other sources, at least that the Russians are saying. Then there's the new information that's come out in just the last few hours. Ukrainian drones are attacking Russian targets in the Kursk region, Russia, with something burning in the Pristinsky district. So, no clue what's going on. We don't have good further information, but they're still active up there. And in Belgorod, again, from just the last few hours ago, there is also some action with missiles coming down from the sky. You can see that missile dropping in for a nice little visit. That's the front lines. And ironically, Belgorod and Sumy and Kursk are all parts of the front lines right now. It's pretty crazy. Let's go ahead and move on to the interesting extras. I don't have anything for U.S. news or other world news today. Was really on a tight schedule, trying to get everything pulled together for this. So much data on Kharkiv that sorting through it was just mind-boggling. But I wanted to make sure you got the absolute best current information I could get my hands on. From the Kyiv Post, northern lights are currently being observed in the south and east of Ukraine, according to local media. That's because of one of the most powerful geomagnetic storms in the last year occurring on Earth. This is a G4 strength storm, which is one step below its maximum possible power. A lot of people have been throwing up their hands going, oh, the sky is falling with this geomagnetic storm. I don't expect that it's going to cause that much trouble, but there could be some power interruptions. South Germany, also with the Northern Lights, absolutely beautiful. And Northern Ukraine also getting their share of the Northern Lights as well. You know, it's moments like this where you realize that the world keeps turning. That the pain and the sorrow and the suffering hopefully will end soon, because the world is going to keep on turning. And hopefully in the next day, it'll be a better day. More video of the solar flares that NASA recorded. Quite the visually impressive scale there. Ham radio operators either are going to want to be on and using the interesting changes to the ionosphere to see what happens, or they might want to stay off in case anything really big hits and fries their radios. Okay, let me get this one larger here. I don't even need to comment on this one. I'm just going to hit play. Sorry, I watched that like 5 times in a row, and I laughed harder each and every time I watched it. Okay, so from Tindar, some decoys are hard to recognize, but others are way too obvious that you better hide from your superiors that you just wasted a $3 million missile on plywood. This is the latter case. Okay, if we watch carefully, you see them examining it. You see the explosion. It actually does not hit the decoy. It hits significantly off to one side. There's no secondary explosions. Yes, it probably did damage to the decoy, but it didn't hit it directly. So the decoy lives to not fight another day. Russian TV presenter Artyom Shinin traveled to the town of Popasnaya in the Luhansk region, captured by Russia, May of 2022. The town is still completely destroyed. In 2 years, Russia has not rebuilt anything at all. They just destroyed and abandoned this town. Welcome to Ruski Mir. Now, I've heard your complaints, and I know that you guys like to see animal pictures at the end. Well, I've always said you can tell the quality of a person by how they treat animals. And we're going to end off with this. Let's see if I can get this up large here. It's about 2.5 minutes to almost 3 minutes long. This is Kirilo Budanov. Sorry, a video message. Let me back up a step in here. This 81-year-old woman has been consistently donating to Ukrainian defenders, even though she doesn't have a lot of money. When I receive pension, first of all, I donate for drones, then I buy medicine and the rest of the money for treats. She shared that when a Russian ship was sunk by Ukraine on her birthday, it was the best gift she has ever received. Now let me go ahead and play this here. Grandma, hi. Sophia, good day. I'm not alone. Good day. Christ is risen. Indeed, he is risen, and Ukraine will rise too. Andrei Yusov? Sit down. I'm sorry, I'm so nervous. We thank you for your principled civic position, for devoting your time and efforts, giving your own money to support the Ukrainian defenders. How could I not? We all have to help. The boys are at the zero line. I'm really worried about them. Whenever I see how the conditions there, it seems to me that every citizen of Ukraine should do their part. That's why today I have the honor to grant you, Ms. Tamara, a gratitude. Kirill Budanov, head of the main directorate of intelligence of the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, General Kirill Budanov was unable to be here in person today, but I'm so nervous. He sends you a personal congratulations on video. Personal? Oh, thank you so much. Ms. Tamara, on behalf of the main director of intelligence and the entire armed forces, I express gratitude for your contribution to our common struggle against the Russian occupiers. Your example inspires Ukrainians to continue to support our army, destroy the enemy, and bring Ukrainian victory closer. I am grateful to you for your efforts. And we will continue to protect our land, our sea, and we will defend our independence. Slava Ukraini, Slava to heroes. When the Sergei ship was sunk, it was right on my birthday. I said, God, what a gift for my birthday. I've never received a gift like this before. When I receive pension, first of all, I send money for drones, then medicine, and the rest for treats. You may not be able to donate much, but you can save 20, 50 hryvnias. Don't buy something for yourself, but donate. They really need it. Who will help them? Thank you. All the best. Thank you. Slava Ukraini. Slava to the heroes. That's a beautiful 81-year-old woman who is giving everything she can to help out, to make a difference, no matter how small, in the fight that her country is going through. It may not be big, but think of the widow's mite. She cast in of her all. There may have been rich people throwing in of their excess, contributing everything, but she gave everything. And what does that truly say? This is Tamara is throwing in her widow's mites. And that's everything for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you appreciate the coverage that we have here on the Ukraine war. So much going on. It's sometimes overwhelming, but other times you can see the work of the Lord in it. But in the end, we'll see. We will see what happens. But we pray for those in Ukraine. You have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next video.